probably the most dramatically eclectic panel ever assembled in the history of panels. Welcome to all of you. All right, let me start with you, if I may, Sean Spicer. Welcome back to Uncensored to you. This incident in Belfast in Northern Ireland, where a 30-year-old Sudanese male, Hadi Aladid, was seen on video committing a heinous act against another man. And some heroes intervened, and it looks like they may have saved the man's life, which would be tremendous news if that's true. But it's been seized upon by people all over the world, as was the Henry Novak incident last week, where he was a young man and the court case determined that he'd been murdered by a young Sikh who had killed him and then tried to play the race card to avoid being blamed by saying he'd been racially abused and was defending himself and so on. And both these incidents have been seized by politicians, by rabble-rousers, by all sorts of people for political reasons. And what we've seen as a consequence of that is a lot of rioting and violence. And we've seen this a lot.
Once more again, we have Piers Morgan and his people. People who come to Morgan on Censor to say what the thing to tell us that they know what they're talking about. Meanwhile, some of them are just propagandists. Some of them, they just come here to support Donald Trump, no matter what. And also people in the United States keep saying that the UK is finished. The UK is, they say all sorts of things, and if you ask them, when was the last time they visited the United Kingdom? They will say, no, I haven't been there. All I can see is what people are saying, but is that true? This is another episode of the Piers Morgan Show. Enjoy it, and don't forget to give me the thumbs up like the channel, and come back for another one.
I think that rallied people who are using, I mean, this is reminiscent of George Floyd, which is just, let's make this one incident bigger than what it is, make it an indictment on the entire process, on where race relationships are. But I don't know when we've started to use each one of these examples as a proxy for larger societal problems. But that's where we are.
It's interesting you say that, because J.D. Vance, for example, intervened in the Novak case. And he said if the European elites had just got their act together earlier, then the Sikh killer would not have been in the country to commit the crime. But of course, what he didn't know, and what he should have found out before he said something like that, is that actually by that criteria, then Henry Novak wouldn't have been in the country, because he's a Polish heritage and his family came from Poland. So he wouldn't have been there either. And with this latest case in Belfast, we're beginning to find out more about this. What we do know is that he came in, we believe, via France into Dublin, and then was able, because of the way the law works between the south and north of Ireland, he was able to then move to the north. And it was there that he sought asylum in 2023. And he was granted refugee status the same year and given leave to remain until 2028. Now, we don't know what happened in that asylum meeting that he had, the interviews. We don't know whether he showed any sign of mental health issues or a refusal to assimilate or any of the things that might disqualify him. But immediately people have been out there shouting, we've got to ban all asylum seekers. That's the only answer to this. And yet Sudan is going through a most horrific unrest at the moment, horrific war. And it used to be the case that countries like the UK, the US and others would take in a number of asylum seekers from places like Sudan who are escaping genuine war and horrors and wanted a better life for themselves. Is the right answer, again, and I'll come to the rest of the panel in a moment, but just, Sean, what do we do here to stop people just doing blanket knee-jerk reactions which whip everybody up and say, right, this means we have, because of one incident, we don't even know why it happened or what happened, that every asylum seeker must now be banned from the UK. We've become a country that doesn't take in asylum seekers. Or in the Novak case, every Sikh must be deported. There are 500,000 Sikhs in the country, in the UK, and they are, famously one of the most law-abiding and peaceful sections of our community. So I just find these knee-jerk reactions incredibly unhelpful.
I don't disagree with you entirely, right? The idea that both sides use incidents to cast an entire wide net about the state of everything. As I said, it's sort of blaming all of societal ills. But look at what's happened in the United States. We have similar instances. A person dies, the criteria are pretty well known, and then we use it as a proxy for race relations. Or in the case of the CEO of United Healthcare, there's literally people setting up defense funds for a guy who was murdered in cold blood. I think that to get to the nut of your question, though, the problem is that asylum, as you mentioned, used to be something that was much more genuine. Somebody was seeking refuge from human rights violations, and it's become, at least in the United States, an excuse to just create an open border situation. So we've actually, the problem actually stems from what one side did with the policy writ large, right? So for the last 4 years of Biden, we kind of used a lot of these terms, asylum, as a proxy to let everybody in. And so now the knee-jerk reaction is, well, then close it all down. And that's where we are. It's not just the incident in themselves. It speaks to a larger problem with how the policies have failed these countries to keep people safe.
Okay, let me bring in the others. Anna Kasparian, welcome back to Uncensored. Elon Musk gets very active about stuff in America, but also about a lot of stuff that happens in the UK where there's a racial or alleged racial element to it. And he's been doing the same here. He got heavily involved in the Henry Novak case last week. He's been getting heavily involved after this incident in Belfast. Tommy Robinson, who I think is one of the worst of the rabble-rousers and just absolutely not what people in America seem to think he is, posted details of protests planned across the country after the Belfast incident. Elon Musk reposted that to over 200 million people and said only by protesting repeatedly and loudly will there be any change. And what we see when these calls to arms happen is people turn up, and a lot of them want to commit acts of violence. And you see, some bad violence against police last week after the Novak case, some bad violence again in Belfast with homes being torched and young people being terrorized. And this cannot be right. But, the bigger question is, why is Elon Musk getting involved in these things in the UK?
Well, let me start off by saying that I think that the parallels between the United States and the UK are really striking. And it's important to understand that there is a reasonable and honest conversation to be had about reforms. And I think the people of the UK should be listened to. I'm not talking about extremists. I'm talking about citizens of the UK who are struggling economically, who are not racist, who do see certain loopholes in immigration policy, and they want to implement changes, not out of a place of hatred, but out of a place of, yes, self-interest about their own societies. So I just want to say that, because I think that there has been an effort to kind of downplay the reality of these mass migration events. With that said, though, I do believe that certain individuals have an incentive to sow chaos, to essentially spout these extremist views and encourage people to engage in the type of violence and rioting that Belfast experienced just recently. And what that does is it prevents having a conversation, a real dialogue about solutions that would be reasonable, that would make the people of the UK happier, that would feel that they were actually being represented by their government officials. I think that the chaos is intentional, and the chaos is meant to kind of sway people or push people away from having conversations that need to be had. It gives you the illusion that you only have these two sides that are very extreme, when in reality, most people are not extreme. Most people are not racist. Most people don't hate immigrants. They just want policies that actually benefit the people of their country. And I think that's reasonable.
Yeah. Curtis, welcome back to Uncensored. The Carmelo Anthony case. There's a 19-year-old black young teenager, Carmelo Anthony, given a 35-year sentence for the murder of a white boy, Austin Metcalf, who was 17, at a high school track meet in Texas last year. And, it was a dramatic case, and there were some dramatic scenes when Austin Metcalf's father directly took on Carmelo Anthony for not looking him in the eye and telling him he destroyed his son's life and destroyed the family's life and so on. But one of the more sickening aspects of this was the way that Carmelo Anthony's family did crowdfunding and raised huge amounts of money. And it just seems to me so warped that should be happening in a case like this. And then it gets whipped up to be an enormous sort of racial story. And we see this happening time and again now What do you make of that?
Well, let me conflate everything you've spoken about so far, Piers, and let me bring it back to Elon Musk, who believes that if you're white, you must be right. I mean, that's his way of operating with problems around the world. Nowak, you mentioned Polish. My name is Polish Sliwa. The Sikh who killed him is doing triple life without parole. The situation in Belfast, I was surprised, actually brought the Catholics and the Protestants together to protest and now riot against the migrants. And yes, there are outside agitators like J.D. Vance who interfere when they don't know the specificity. Now, the case in Texas, clearly the family was exploiting what was a murder, which clearly had no rhyme or reason, or, for instance, saying that this young man was emotionally disturbed or had psychological issues. He went to kill this guy, and now he's going to have to pay the price. So I say we all have to back off, stop looking through the prism of color, and let's start looking at who's right and who's wrong, and stop the nonsense, Elon Musk, because you're throwing gasoline on the fire.
That's what I think the problem is. He's got a massive megaphone on his own platform, 200 million followers. So when he says stuff, it carries a lot of influence. Charlie Arnold, welcome back to Uncensored to you. I think Anna made a really good point there, and one that may surprise people who see her on the show and think she wouldn't say that off the top. But it's an important point to make, which is that, you've got to understand that these things aren't happening in a vacuum, that there are a lot of people in Britain who are really pissed off with the failure of successive governments to deal properly with the immigration issue, both illegal immigration of people coming over on small boats, which has just carried on with tens of thousands every year, just washing up on the shore, and nothing seems to be done about it. Then they're put into really nice hotels a lot of the time, and they're using public services, which are already creaking up the seams from a population that's risen from 1950 at 50 million to nearly 70 million now. So a pretty rapid rise in the population with all the pressure that puts on public services. And they are fed up with it. And then they have the problem of legal migration, where we've let in millions and millions of people with often 4 or 5 family members coming too, which now has been stopped. But this, again, it changes the feel of people's neighborhoods, of their communities. It massively increases the pressure on public services. And I think to ignore that is a reality, and to ignore that has genuine effect on people and they have real concerns about it, as Anna said, is to ignore a large part of the problem here. Yes, they may get exploited, these stories and incidents, by bad actors, but you can't get away from the fact that, as in America, when millions were coming over the southern border under Joe Biden, people were pissed off with it.
Yeah, and they rightfully should be. I live in New York City, and we saw our city, go to complete waste in certain aspects because of all of the illegal immigrants. Like you said, people were be putting up in these hotels. You had hotels that were shutting down solely just to house migrants. The taxes became insane. The police couldn't do their jobs. And I think all over the world, you're just seeing this social distrust. You go back to the stabbing in Belfast, this guy who was helping out his Sudanese neighbor, he was helping him just days before move into his home. That's something that's very sweet, something that should be rewarded.
Well, I think I would just be wary at the moment of making too many conclusions before we really know, because there's a lot of stuff I've been reading about it which may cast a different thing about it. I just think we just don't know, right? I really want to find out. I think it's incredible that a guy is given 5 years to remain in the UK as an asylum seeker, and yet is clearly completely deranged enough to try and cut someone's head off, as we saw on the video. So why has this happened? What was happening to this guy? Did he get radicalized? Is he mentally sick? Should he have ever been given asylum? All these are important questions, but I think to assume too much at this stage is part of the problem too.
Of course, I'm just going by what facts seem to be accurately reported so far. And that would be we don't even have to speak to this specific context. It's, people aren't inherently racist. They aren't inherently bigoted. Growing up, there weren't these same issues that we're all dealing with now. We welcome people with open arms of all colors, of all ethnicities. And now you're just seeing everything so segmented because of all of the, I think, the way things are conveyed in the media. I mean, we are literally being forced apart at the seams, and that's intentional. I think mostly by our leftist counterparts. I think that people want to be able to help others. They want us all to be able to come together as a society. And I think right now we're unable to do so. And it's creating such extreme conflict. And people are so scared of being considered racist or considered bigoted that they're just going so far in the opposite direction where they won't speak out. I mean, yes, there are situations where we're all willing to have conversations, and you're seeing that more than you were a couple of years ago. But I still think in a lot of situations, people don't want to say anything because they're scared of what label they might get as a result of doing so.
Yeah, Harry Sisson, welcome back to Uncensored to you. I mean, the Carmelo Anthony crowdfunding for the killer was nauseating, but we've seen a similar pattern with the killer of Brian Johnson, the health chief, the so-called hot killer. You know, that repulsed me as well, the way he was kind of lionized. We saw the same thing with the Zonaev brothers who blew up the marathon, the Boston Marathon and so on. There's a kind of weird phenomenon, maybe driven by social media, I don't know what it is, of lionizing awful people who've done despicable things, or the public racing to give money to people who've perpetrated sickening murders. What is that about? How do we deal with that?
Well, look, I think the points so far have been pretty good on this topic, which is, most people are not murderous sycophants who want to give money to murderers. Most people just care about their family, their jobs, their communities, and they call out stuff like this. Unfortunately, on social media sometimes, and especially with highly sensitive cases like the ones we're talking about right now, the loudest voices in the room often get amplified, and they are seen as the prominent driver of the conversation. It just couldn't be further from the truth. So whether it's Carmelo Anthony or Luigi Mangione, or there have been Republican-led fundraising campaigns. There was a woman who said the N-word, I think it was in Minnesota or Wisconsin, that got like $1 million from that video that went viral. These are outliers. These are not your average Americans you're going to talk to on the street. And so I think there's a conversation to be had about these things, but I think it's important to lead that conversation with the idea that, these are not your neighbors. These are incels who sit inside all day and type on their Cheeto dust keyboard in their parents' basement.
Yeah, and I think...
Piers, can I just ask, and I'm saying, in all honesty, Harry, I want to ask you this respectfully, because I agree with you, most people don't. But I do believe that, and I think Charlie brought this up, the supporters of at least Brian Thompson, who have sort of gone out and given Luigi Mangione money, are not from the right. They are from the left, right? Do you believe that that is just a minority aspect of the left and it's not a widely held belief?
Well, I wouldn't be so sure about that. I wouldn't say that the overwhelming majority of people who did support Luigi Mangione are on the left. There are also people on the right who, maybe have some horseshoe theory taking place here that might endorse something like that, might endorse something surrounding violence. And if you just want to take an example of violence on the right that's been endorsed, think about all the January 6th insurrectionists who have had GoFundMe started for them and money raised through that. There are lunatics who will do things on both sides. Sometimes it's bipartisan, sometimes it's more one party than the other. But it can't just be that, the Democrats did this or the Republicans did this. It's just a thing across the board.
that is a good point, Sean. I mean, Donald Trump trying to pardon people who've committed acts of violence on January the 6th, putting aside the others, but the ones who committed acts of violence, particularly against police officers and so on, he shouldn't have done that, should he?
Well, I understand why he did what he did, but I would have rather there be a little bit more of a surgical approach, meaning I think if you commit an act of violence against a law enforcement individual, or you commit an act of known violence, meaning you smashed a window at the Capitol or something, I don't have any sympathy for you at all. In fact, I think you should go to jail. I think where the line got crossed on January 6th, unfortunately, where there were a lot of people that were swept up and weaponized, who were innocent bystanders who walked into something. Again, I'm not excusing some of this behavior, but when you look at how they were handled, how they were prosecuted, how the system was weaponized against them for what normally would have been a misdemeanor or something that they got left off on, even the most innocent. So there was this entire swept up kind of mentality. That being said, I would have much preferred a surgical approach that said, make your case that you were not doing anything bad, that there's nothing wrong with what you did, and we'll kind of exclude you. Because I don't want ever my party to be associated with acts of violence or acts of assault against anyone in law enforcement ever, full stop.
Okay. I just want to switch to California politics now. Nithya Raman will face incumbent Karen Bass in a November runoff for LA mayor. The former reality TV star Spencer Pratt had an early lead over Raman, but over days of counting, she leapfrogged him. With the new results, she had 28% of the vote. Pratt had 25%. Anna Kasperin, inevitably, Donald Trump has come out swinging at the weekend saying it's all rigged in California. And the fact it takes so long, by the way, with all their elections there is absurd. But putting that to one side, this whole thing that everything has to be rigged, do you think there's any merit to this? I mean, forgetting it's California and it's a Democrat state and so on, is there merit to these constant suggestions of rigging? Because there is a theory, and I saw David Axelrod put this out on his X feed, that this is all a precursor to the midterm elections and maybe even the next general election, that there will just be this enormous cry led by Donald Trump of it's all rigged, you can't believe it, you can't take it seriously, and so on.
I'm not sure. I'm not even going to speculate as to whether the allegations of rigging in LA are just like a precursor to allegations of rigging for the midterms. Trump is always going to claim that an election is rigged when the result isn't favorable to someone he endorsed or to himself. But putting that aside entirely, guys, I just need people who think the election was rigged in LA to understand LA is one of the bluest cities in the bluest state in our country. And Spencer Pratt was unabashedly running as a Republican who was saying things that Democratic voters do not like. Now, he was drawing attention to very real issues we have in Los Angeles. Certainly, the way that our elected lawmakers and our leaders here have completely abandoned actually getting people off the streets and into safety, getting them the mental health treatment they need, getting them off of drugs they're addicted to. But his ideas just really didn't make any sense. He didn't really think through what he wanted to do when it came to these issues. He just drew attention to it. Nithya Raman is my least favorite candidate. I did not vote for Spencer Pratt. I did not vote for Nithya Raman. I can't stand Karen Bass, but out of the three, she's, in my opinion, the least worst of the three. So we'll see what happens with the election. But there was no rigging. There was no rigging. I need people to understand, yes, California is as incompetent as it really is. Okay, like they just have a difficult time getting the ballots counted quickly enough. And I think we need to fix that because it does give the appearance of funny business. Yeah. I don't think there was funny business,
that's the
but
point.
The fact that it takes so long. Yeah, exactly.
I agree.
So we need to fix that.
As somebody who I actually have a home in California, in LA, I mean, I find it incredible, Charlie, that Karen Bass is heading back to be mayor after what happened with the fires. Just that alone. I mean, when the fires began to rage, she's on some jolly in Africa somewhere. I thought her handling of the fires was deplorable. I thought that alone should be disqualifying. And here she is roaring back. Polly Market in the LA mayor race. Polly Market is predicting that she's way ahead, 60%. Nithya Raman on 38%. Big moves in these markets. I find it incomprehensible that she should be marching back to power.
Well, this just identifies the not even existent standards that Los Angelinos, that's how you say it, right, have for themselves. I mean, it's just insane. She was not even in the state when the fires occurred. She was off traveling. And, I know that, listen, I'm speaking, again, based upon the evidence that I have. And that evidence is that the election demonstrates that it has, yes, been rigged, because we have now seen all over social media in the past few days, reporters going to residents on Skid Row and asking them, were you approached by a ballot harvester and given money in return to cast a vote for a Democratic candidate? To which all of these people said yes. In fact, the going rate initially was $2 up to $5. I would be upset if I accepted the lower end of that deal. But that's one thing. These people have all said, yes, I was told to vote for Karen Bass. I was told to vote for the other Democratic candidate. And they did that. And then they asked, do you even know who these people are? They said, no, I don't know who they are. So the fact that anybody, anywhere in the world can send ballot harvesters to LA, have them go to homeless encampments, get these votes, send them in with nobody watching, with a 3-week time frame is just evidence to how corrupt the political fraud is within the state of California. And I have to imagine you have Maduro sitting in a jail cell in Brooklyn, probably thinking to himself, like, you idiots, what are you doing? Like, you should at least know enough to at least make it look like you're not cheating. Give some votes to Spencer Pratt. He was up by 40,000 votes on election night. Suddenly that lead dwindled away. None of the votes that magically started rolling in were for Spencer Pratt. It's obvious fraud and cheating. I just don't know what we're talking about here.
Okay, Curtis, what is your view of this? Because I got to say, I've lived and worked in America for 2 decades. The American democratic election system is, I would say, probably the best in the world. Notwithstanding the glitches, the flaws, the problems, that actually as a system, it's incredibly robust and pretty reliable, I would say. Is that your feeling? Because, like Anna said, when things like California take so long, one of the wealthiest parts of the world, it has a GDP up there with huge European countries, but it can't get its act together for an election. And as we just heard from Charlie, these reports of a lot of homeless people in LA being paid to vote and so on, it's just the optics of that look terrible. But do you believe that intrinsically that the system is really flawed?
Well, Pierce, let's look at California, home of Silicon Valley, where they're pushing AI to tabulate things within seconds. The reason you delay a count in a state that still demands that everybody get a mail-in ballot, even if you don't want it, 19 million is sent out in a population of 40 million, which opens up the opportunity for these bundlers, these hustlers. And remember, Republicans have gone to jail for that in North Carolina, Democrats in New Jersey. You're taking advantage. They go into nursing homes. They go into hospice. They go into senior citizen homes. They go into shelters. They bundle up the ballots. And what Pratt didn't realize, because he's not an institutional Republican, they don't have any in L.A., is that both sides, the DSA Rahman and Bass, went into the shelters and told all the homeless people, Pratt wants to get rid of you and he wants to take your dogs. And so right away they're like, yeah, where do I sign? Where do I sign? They took advantage of a system in which we should know where 95% of the ballots are by election night. And that's not what the case is in California. And it helps the Democrats there enormously.
Okay, Harry, what's
Curtis,
your...
don't you... Sorry,
Anna,
can I just jump in? The only thing that I take a little bit of issue with, Curtis, is, look, I understand the concerns about ballot harvesting. However, there are senior citizens or disabled individuals who might not be able to go to the polls, might not be able to... They're not mobile, right? And they're still citizens. They still have the right to vote. And we have to find a way to facilitate something so it's easy for them to vote. So what do you suggest?
First of all, this was a solution. Curtis, if I can't, look, real quick, the way it's always worked in every state and territory of the United States is that if you wanted a ballot, so if you were disabled, if you were traveling, if you had a health issue, you requested your absentee ballot. It worked just fine. If you couldn't make it, maybe you had a work conflict, you were going to be traveling, you were in the military, you requested a ballot and it was sent to you. To the point of this conversation, once we flipped the script and started sending one to everyone who never even asked, we see incident after incident where people who haven't lived in a house for 9, 10, 15 years are getting a ballot addressed to that mailbox. That is literally creating the perfect storm for massive amounts of fraud. This was something that Jimmy Carter himself recognized in the 2000. Yeah, it was, Harry. He did. So,
well, I mean, this is just absurd that we're even like entertaining this right now. I can't even believe we're sitting here having this conversation.
No,
this is absolutely ridiculous.
And by the way, can I look, one more little ingredient to throw into the pot? When you have a system like California, which, and California is not alone in this, where you create a system where you give illegals a license because you claim it's under it helps the common good. And then that same license is what can be used to register to vote, and you prohibit the auditing of those rolls. You've created the perfect mousetrap on the left to ensure that people can and they will never be discovered. This is the Democrats, at the least, they deserve credit for creating the mousetrap that prevents us from ever investigating how deep this really is.
Harry?
Sean, are you saying that undocumented immigrants are voting in California? And if that's the case, what's your source?
Oh, I'm saying they're voting everywhere, actually, because my point is, if you give them
what's
the
license. What's your source for that?
Common sense.
You know, the Heritage Foundation has only found 1,500 cases since the early 2000s of undocumented people voting or trying to vote. Wait, Sean Spicer.
New Jersey, hold on. You asked what my source was. In New Jersey last week, there were several non-citizens who are seeking naturalization that gave sworn affidavits that they were registered to vote and cast ballots in multiple elections, although they themselves said that they swore under oath that they themselves never cast those ballots. The Secretary of State has affirmed that those ballots were cast under their name. So there's your evidence. We know it's happening.
So they got caught.
Were they counted?
No, they didn't get caught. They turned themselves in because in the process of the naturalization system, they have to admit whether they're registered or not. And they wanted to self-report and to say, hey, I don't want this to stop the ability to become a naturalized citizen because you're going to find out that I'm registered to vote. And in fact, someone voted under my name. It wasn't me. So they self-reported to the Secretary of State in New Jersey.
All right, Harry.
So they were caught. Their votes weren't counted, basically, is why we're here. By the way, Heritage Foundation, actually, we all know. Whoa. Sean. Heritage Foundation, obviously very pro-Trump. Trump has handpicked judges from the Heritage Foundation his entire political career. You know this. They've only found around 1,500 cases.
Heritage Foundation is a think tank.
Excuse me. Yeah, people that lived in the Heritage Foundation before. They're lawyers who worked in the Heritage Foundation, then went to go on the courts.
Wow, they lived there.
Yeah, occupationally, Sean, please, don't be daft. The Heritage Foundation has found only 1,500 cases of voter fraud involving people who shouldn't be voting as in undocumented immigrants since around the early 2000s. 1,500. That is from the Heritage Foundation. So you're trying to argue that this is something widespread, seemingly, that this is happening all over the country, and it's just not, and you have no evidence. Right now you're saying, oh, people in New Jersey were
give you credit, Harry. I think
they were registered to vote and they were caught.
You give people a license,
Sean,
then you give them, you make sure that they can't audit the voting rolls.
Sean, I think Bigfoot is real because he hides so well. That's exactly what you're saying. That it's just, oh, this conspiracy is so deep and so hidden so well that we just can't discover it. It just doesn't exist.
Too, so I'm just telling you.
It just the voter rolls get audited in all these states. It doesn't exist.
Rolls to be audited in blue states.
Well, first of all, we're not going to give our voter rolls to the federal government and Donald Trump, who has made it clear that he doesn't want people to vote. However, these voter rolls in each individual state is audited by these states. And unless you think there's like this large-scale fraud among Democrat states that they're all in coordination to keep their voter rolls hidden and like keep fraud on the ballots, then like, man, you're alleging a really major criminal conspiracy here that we're going to need some evidence for.
Yeah, we have evidence. Did you graduate from a Leering Center?
Yeah, I was gonna say there's been so much evidence and people are now being indicted for, including in California. There is evidence.
1,500 cases from the Heritage Foundation. This is like,
hey, let me ask you,
this is like legitimately
the
dumbest conversation we could be possibly having.
Hey, Harry, how many cases is acceptable to you? How many votes have to get canceled out? What's the threshold for you? Is it 2,000, 5,000?
Sean, unlike your party, zero crime.
What's the answer?
I'm going to tell you. I'm answering you. Unlike your party, crime in the Democratic Party, any amount is unacceptable. You have a felon in the Oval Office who pardons people who commits crimes and fraud and all this stuff. We don't want any voter fraud. We don't want any voting irregularities. But there's over 300. He's pardoned all these fraudsters. He pardoned the Chrisleys in Georgia who defrauded local Atlanta banks out of $20 million. I would love an explanation on why he did that.
Well, maybe we should start with Joe Biden pardoning half of his family who've been accused of running criminal enterprises.
I'm happy to talk about that.
I mean, you know, this is the problem.
I'm happy to talk about that, but if you take a problem with that, take a problem with Trump.
All right, I want to switch gears. I want to talk about the Donald Trump visit to the Knicks game, where it looked like he got pretty loudly booed. Let's take a look at the clip. Now, Sean Spicer, if you were at the podium as the White House press secretary, would you be comfortable saying that the president, as he claimed, it was, I think, mostly cheers, it was loud and very enthusiastic? Would you have said those words?
I probably, well, not if I wanted to stay in my job.
Well, that's what Donald Trump said about it, that it was very positive.
Right, no, look, obviously, who knows how, I mean, he's sitting there, maybe the people around him were cheering.
Did it sound to you like mostly cheers, very enthusiastic?
But look, I sound like Harry now. I'll answer your question. I actually think two things. One, he's in New York City. I don't think it's a shocker that the majority of people in New York or any urban city these days in America is largely Democrat, as Anna pointed out. LA, right? It's 75% Democrat, which is not surprising to see a turnout the way it was. But if you're in New York City, they're not big fans. Neither is Washington, D.C. I don't know that it was that big of a deal. To me, to be honest with you, what I found most offensive is whether you're on the right or the left, in the middle of the national anthem, to be booing, I think that is classless. It is disrespectful to the country. You want to protest the president, go for it. Welcome to America. But the idea of in the middle of the national anthem to be booing, shame on you, shame on everyone on the left that thinks that's an appropriate venue to do that. So if that's what you think is good in your party,
let me bring in Charlie. Let me ask Charlie. I mean, Charlie, surely the people in the crowd were just exercising their free democratic right to boo, weren't they?
Yeah, they have every right to boo. I agree with Sean that it's not the appropriate time to do during the national anthem when we should all be, quiet and, respectful. But a lot of people aren't respectful, and I won't
Should he have been there at all?
I know who many of those people are.
Should he have been there at all? I mean, Stephen A. Smith. Smith blamed Trump personally for the New York Knicks losing because they've been on this amazing
first of all,
streak.
I'm for that. I'm for the Knicks losing.
We've got the clip. Let's take a look at Stephen A. Smith and what he said.
I believe if the New York Knicks had that watch party and Donald Trump wasn't there, they'd have won last night. I believe that.
You're living in a fantasy world.
I believe that the man messed with them. Do you believe in mojo? Do you believe in momentum?
No.
Do you believe in that passion? You don't believe in that, Bill?
No.
Now you're lying.
I mean, I guess, as the series plays out, we'll discover if Trump was the curse and the problem or not.
Well, the curse, depending who you ask, right? If you ask the Spurs, they should consider him their good luck charm because it's the first game in the finals that they have won so far, and he was in attendance. So if I'm Trump, I'm saying, hey, San Antonio Spurs, just for you, I'm going to come back to games 4. I'll also be there at game 6. You're welcome. But, to the point of him being booed, there also was a very loud USA, USA chant that was begun right as the cameras panned to Trump. That was seen all over social media, yet that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about the people with TDS who just want to focus on the booing. Trump absolutely deserved to be in that building. Not only was he invited by the team owner, but also he is a native New Yorker. He is a longtime Knicks fan. If you go back,
that's
you can
true.
find
I've talked to him about the Knicks for 20 years. He is a massive Knicks fan.
I couldn't care less.
I mean,
Curtis, one of the most patriotic things you can do is boo Donald Trump. It's one of the most. And so when you're having people chant USA, these are patriots who care about their country, who are also. Sorry, we don't want convicted felons who commit fraud in the Oval Office. Sorry, we just don't want that.
Let me bring Curtis in because your organisation, Guardian Angels, you've had volunteers patrolling the MSG, the Garden, and it will be for the other guys to keep fans safe and so on. You're a Knicks fan. How do you feel about Trump being there? Was it, obviously always causes a lot of chaos as the president goes, problems with traffic and all the rest of it. Was there a factor there where it slightly threw the momentum of the Knicks and their fan base and the team, which had been built to something very special?
Come on. Stephen A. Smith was looking for clicks. That's all he was looking for. The president had a right to be there. But I'll tell you this. He was shocked when he got booed. That was not a normal Knick audience. 4 tickets, 1,000. Resale, $285,000. 7,000 minimum. Those were millionaires. Those were the ultra rich. They were booing him. That's a harbinger of things to come because of this stupid war in Iran. He said 35%. You look at the inflation rate up to 4% today. Unemployment because of AI. He's not paying any attention to what's going on in America. Those boos are a harbinger of things to come from rich people. Those weren't blue-collar working class or poor people. Those were his people. His people.
Damn, Curtis. Damn, Curtis.
I love it. I love
Didn't
it.
expect that from
That's
you.
actually it's a very
Fire.
interesting observation.
But can I say this? Curtis has got a huge point here, right? I'm really glad he brought this up. The idea, the average cost of a ticket for the next game is, I think, $6,400. The people who are paying that are not your average blue collar person that probably is struggling to pay, a couple $100 a ticket. So they're really an interesting angle as to who was in that audience. These were not your normal everyday New Yorkers, and even that I probably would argue are not predisposed to them. But just the last thing I'll say is I actually hope Trump goes to every Yankee game too, as a Red Sox fan. So I'm just saying.
Anna, what do you think of
So
this?
you see him as the curse. You want him to go to all the teams you hate. Got it.
All right. So I just think, look, I see the point that Sean is trying to make, like, oh, the people booing him are like the rich and the elite, and the people are with Trump. I don't know if the people are with Trump when you consider what his approval rating looks like and the fact that the latest economic report indicates that inflation has shot up to 4.2% as a result of this disastrous and moronic war that we got dragged into. So I don't think that Trump is doing well with the people. I think that his coalition has now fractured as a result of the foreign policy decisions he's made that has impacted not just our economy, but the global economy. And there seems to be no end in sight.
Yeah, I mean, Sean, I've got to ask you, I'll come to you, Harry, in a second, but I've got to ask you, I just don't understand this whole Iran thing at all. You campaign on being the guy who's not going to drag America into pointless, expensive Middle Eastern wars. You're going to focus on America first, getting the average American more money in their pocket, sorting out inflation, sorting out the cost of living. And in one fell swoop, by attacking Iran, he's abandoned the campaign pledge not to get involved in messy Middle Eastern wars, with the biggest, messiest Middle Eastern war imaginable. He's sent energy prices through the roof. He's sent now inflation surging back. Food prices will be next because, they're obviously part of this inflation report, but the fertilizer aspect of the Strait of Hormuz cannot be ignored, where a lot of the world's fertilizer has been held up, and that will have a delayed impact on the food chain. None of this makes any sense to me, Sean. I don't know why he did it.
Let me ask you this, in all seriousness. Do you think that would ever have been a political upside to going to Iran?
No.
Right. Okay. I think I want to just level set that. I agree with you. There was never going to be a political upside going to Iran. Okay, but that's the point, is that when you're president, that you have to do things that are in the best interest of the country. Iran presented America as a threat. They were developing a nuclear weapon. They've
a threat to America?
They've killed a service member on average every 3 days.
You said a threat to America. Did Iran pose a threat to America? Hang on, Sean, hang on. Did Iran pose, before this war began, any direct threat to America?
Absolutely. They killed an average of one service member every 3 days for the last 3 years, either directly or through an Iranian proxy. So if you don't think that that's a threat, I don't know what is. But when you start killing our service members, on average, one every 3 days, that is something to be aware of. Harry is smirking because obviously he's never served this country. But I'm just telling you, that is a direct threat.
Not smirking.
And the president knew that there was not an upside. That's something that we can all agree on. He did it because it was the right thing to do.
I don't think he did. I think he did it. I think he did it because Sean, I think he did it because Benjamin Netanyahu persuaded him that if he did it, they would get regime change. And it would be like Venezuela. It would all be over in 2 to 3 weeks.
At any point, the easy answer is just to cut and run. If he really thought that then or now, even now, the easy answer is just to say, okay, problem solved. We go back, the strait opens, oil starts flowing again. The president's doing what is in the best long-term interest of keeping this country safe. That's it, full stop. Because he can easily
I don't know why
end
Sean
it.
hasn't signed up to serve. You should go over there, Sean.
Hey, Harry,
go ahead in
dumbass.
Iran and go serve. Go do that.
Harry,
go serve in Iran
get your
right
head
now.
out of
right
your
now,
ass,
Sean.
Harry.
Sean, go serve in Iran. You keep talking about this is a great war. We got to do it. I'd love to see you on the front lines out in Iran. Go be on one of the ships. That's great. You do that. Now, by the way, Sean, we don't have to be here. You know why we're here? Donald Trump put us in that position. He ripped up the JCPOA. Remember that Obama nuclear deal that had independent inspectors going in and looking around? The thing that prevented them from getting a nuclear weapon? Iran started enriching their uranium after 2018, after we ripped up that deal, that whole thing. Yeah, we can go back to that. That'd be great. But Donald Trump put us in this position.
Yeah. Hey, Harry,
Damn right.
do you have access to the internet?
I do, Sean.
Why don't you read my bio? Take a time out for a second before you say stupid things like that. Okay?
I'm saying go back. I'm saying go back.
Go read my bio before you make a stupid comment
Sean,
like that.
Go
Get
back.
your head out of your ass.
Go back and serve. Go back and serve, Sean. You're on here talking, oh, other Americans should serve. We should put these young men and women on the front lines. They should die. We already have 13 Americans dead, hundreds
Harry,
injured. You keep advocating from your wealthy home, wherever you live, and say, hey, these people should go serve. People my age should go serve. Gen Z should go serve. But you're sitting here on Piers Morgan talking about other people serving. Go serve again. Go to Iran. Why aren't you signing up right now? Why aren't you in uniform?
Why
aren't you in uniform?
Harry, you may have a problem with the English language.
Sean, time out. Why aren't you in uniform right now?
Do you know? I know you don't know how this works, but I'm in the reserves.
Sean, answer the question. Why are you in uniform right now?
Hey.
Okay, then great. Go suggest yourself to go serve. Sean,
understand how this
suggest
works?
To serve.
I
Sean,
am
go
in the
suggest to
military,
serve.
you
can go up.
dumbass.
Great. Call him up and say, I want to go to Iran.
I just want to note that going to war against Iran actually makes us less safe.
About how this works.
Sean, cry more. You're
not
one
crying.
of these wealthy Republicans who sits in your wealthy home and you tell other people to go serve while you're sitting there making a bunch of money, advocating for Donald Trump, shilling for whatever you're shilling these days. Go serve. It's disgusting. It pisses me off that people like you, these wealthy Republicans, tell people my age to go serve.
Language. I don't know which. Maybe
Sean,
it's both.
I don't know why you're not answering the question. Just go suggest for yourself to go serve in Iran. You can do that. Okay, great, go.
Hey, Harry,
Sean, go.
Harry, shut up. The way it works is you don't tell the military how to
keep crying, Sean. Why don't you? Are you advocating for your other Republican commentators to go as well, or are you just? What's the word there? Are you just telling other Americans, the sons and daughters of Americans to go serve?
Luckily, more and more people are signing up under Donald Trump.
Should all the Republican commentators who are advocating for this war do that as well?
I think there's plenty of opportunity for people to serve the country. I've been in for 27 years.
Should they go serve?
So
should they go serve, Sean?
I'd love to see you come
on in. Should they go? I'm not advocating for a foreign war right now. I'm not advocating for a foreign war right now, Sean. Should these Republican commentators who advocate for this war, should they go serve? Should they go? But it's a contradiction, Sean. Should these Republican
I'm not sure. To be honest with you, Harry, hang on. Harry, I'm not entirely convinced that sending Mark Levin, for example, to fight the Iranians is going to help anybody. So I do think it's a bit of a facile argument, to be honest with you.
There are Gen Z Republican commentators, peers, who are on social media all day, and I see them all day.
Yeah.
They advocate for this war. They want other people to go serve while they're making a bunch of money. And I'm just curious why they aren't signing up. Why aren't they? Why don't they voluntarily go?
I think the IDF should fight this war. This is Israel's war. The IDF should fight this war.
Well,
they want the nuclear dust. They should go in and get it.
It may well be that sooner rather than later, it is the IDF that's only the one fighting this war, because I think Trump is going to. I actually do think if he's sensible, he will cut and run and get out of this, because it's clearly turning into a total disaster for him. And I don't think there's going to be any semblance of a real victory. I don't think you're going to see the Iranians give up their enriched uranium. I don't think you're going to see them give up control of the Strait of Hormuz. I don't think the IRGC are going to give up their tight grip on the country. And I think the Ayatollah's son will turn out to be nastier and more radical than his father, because half his family got killed at the start of the war. Why wouldn't he be? So I think the whole thing was an ill-fated escapade, which has just turned into an absolute quagmire of the worst kind that Donald Trump always said he didn't want to get involved with. That's just my view. Maybe we'll wake up next week and there's a big cozy deal and he'll have proven me wrong. I don't think so. Let's turn to the UFC at the White House. Charlie, you're our resident panel UFC expert. Is it a good idea, this? It's UFC Freedom 250. Obviously, as a Brit, I have mixed feelings about you celebrating this appalling day in your history. But is it a good idea to have the UFC on the lawn outside the White House? Some people think it trivializes the sport. It shouldn't be happening. What do you think?
I think if you're a sports fan, this event should excite you, regardless of your political leanings. I think it's a one-of-a-kind event. It will go down in history, and I highly doubt we're ever going to see anything like it ever again because of its grandioseness. I think it's super cool what we are showing off. You know, the UFC, this isn't just an ability to have your run-of-the-mill fight night. I mean, this is really a representation of an incredible journey. I mean, you go back to the year 2000, 36 states would not allow the UFC, and it was completely banned. It was Trump that eventually opened his doors to the Taj Mahal Casino in Atlantic City for the first UFC sanctioned event. And it was from there the UFC started to gain a lot of momentum. And it was there that Dana White and Donald Trump's friendship began about 25 years ago. Now, going from those small venues to having such an ultra spectacular event taking place on the White House lawn. So really, I think this is a celebration, not just of our country, it's a celebration of one of the biggest sports promotions in the world for the fighters, for the fans. And I think that there's a lot of people out there who want to complain because people love to find reasons to complain. We all know this, saying, oh my goodness, taxpayers are going to be the ones footing this bill. We're going to be out more dollars. Our groceries are going up. Our gas is going to go up. No, it's not. The UFC is footing the entire $60 million bill, not to mention the $700,000 restoration bill that will be required to restore the South Lawn after the event. So everybody calm down. No worries. It's going to be an amazing event, and I hope everybody watches.
Curtis, do you agree with that?
You know, I'm the fighter out of the six of us. I think I've been in my fair share of street fights and in the ring.
I've had a few fights.
I don't
Curtis.
like. Right, but I don't. What, in gin mills and bars?
No. I've had a few rough and tumbles in the street.
We could get you
the
in
mean
the event,
streets of
Curtis.
East Sussex.
But I will tell you this. As a fighter, I don't believe you should hit a man or a woman when they're down. But it is the president's choice. This is what I would prefer as a litmus test for America. Years ago, when the original Ayatollah supporters took over the embassy in Tehran, in the WWF, you had two characters, the Iron Sheikh, who represented the Ayatollah, and Sergeant Slaughter, who represented America. And everybody was on the side of America. If you were to hypothetically put in a Bibi Netanyahu fighter with an Israeli flag and an Iranian leader, I don't know if the audience would be supporting Bibi or the Iranian fighter. That's how much things have changed.
You know, Curtis, the fight I'd really like to see in the octagon at the weekend would be Harry and Sean.
Oh, my God.
I'll do it.
Sean?
Okay, I would fly down just for that. I was going to suggest Scott Bessent versus Bill Pulte, but that might even be.
Sean, do you reckon you take Harry?
I don't think that would even be a fair fight, to be honest with you. I think he'd probably come with a bunch of lawyers and.
Would you go for a quick? Would you go for a quick win, or would you want to just torture him over a few rounds?
Oh, that's a really.
Why are we talking about Sean Spicer as if he can fight, right? Why are we talking about him torturing me?
Well, he's the military guy. I'm not saying you look like a weed, Harry, but you're not the biggest of units, are you?
Well, excuse me, Pierce. Excuse me. Listen, if Sean ever wants to spar, if Sean is in New York City and he would like to spar, I will do it. And you know what? Matter of fact, Sean, if you are here and you want to spar, we can donate a certain amount to charity. I'll donate to yours. You'll donate to mine, whoever wins.
Okay, you know what? I really want to screen that as an uncensored exclusive. All right, you two in the ring.
Piers, you have my word.
Charlie can commentate, and Anna can just come along for the laughs. Yeah. Anna, who do you think would win?
Anna, what are you doing?
Well, Anna, who do you think would win?
Anna, you could be the octagon girl.
If they actually fight, Anna, who's going to win, do you think? Sean or Harry?